So the pageant world to me is something that it was an interesting season of life. It was nothing that I was ever groomed for. It was nothing that was ever on my radar.
I was living in China and doing a lot of work with the victims from trafficking, work with a orphanage in Romania.
We didn't have the opportunities to do certain things because we were so caught up thinking, okay, after Miss USA, we'll move to LA and we'll become, famous because our agent is going to book us for XYZ and then we'll somehow get on a reality TV show.
Erika Kirk is catching serious attention again. And this time, it's all about her past in the Miss USA world. What used to be brushed off as random is now being questioned hard after older photos and timelines started popping up everywhere. It turns out Erika was already active in the pageant scene back in 2009, even appearing on stage alongside Lindsay Halligan. That detail alone has people doing a double take, especially now that both names are being mentioned in a much bigger conversation. Fast forward to today, and people are starting to connect the dots in a different way. Erika recently secured a position on the U.S. Air Force Academy Board, and critics are now asking how that came together considering her background. The online discussion is getting louder, with many wondering if pageant connections and networking played a bigger role than expected. And this is where things start to feel more layered. Some people are now revisiting Erika's relationship timeline with Charlie.
Erika Franzway, 23, Arizona.
Erika was once mistaken for Cameron Diaz, which led to an invitation aboard a luxurious yacht. Sadly, she was booted when they realized it wasn't Cameron Diaz. You're not on a yacht when you're Arizona.
Suggesting their connection may not have been as spontaneous as it once seemed. Old details, overlapping timelines, and different versions of events are being looked at again, and people are questioning how everything really came together. There's also growing talk about Erika's past appearances, international travel, and the circles she was part of before becoming widely known. From charity work overseas to connections across multiple countries, her background is now under a spotlight like never before. At the same time, it's important to keep things grounded. A lot of the claims and theories being discussed online remain unverified and are still heavily debated. But even with that, the volume of questions being raised has kept this situation trending and hard to ignore. One of the biggest talking points right now is how Erika previously described her entry into pageants as something casual, saying she joined after receiving something in the mail. But now, with older footage and documented appearances resurfacing, that version of events is being challenged in a major way. And the more these details stack up, the more people are starting to wonder if the full story has ever really been fully explained. Erika also previously stated that the 2012 Miss Arizona competition.
Was it after that? That's when you started pageants? Or when did that come about?
Right. So the pageant world to me is something that it was an interesting season of life. It was nothing that I was ever groomed for. It was nothing that was ever on my radar. I wanted to play professional basketball.
Tomboy.
That was my thing. I remember getting something in the mail when I had come home from school one summer, and it was like, hey, you should compete at Miss Arizona USA. Someone nominated you. And I was like, I don't know who would nominate me for that, but okay. So the pageant world for me was something that was not a form of narcissism. It was more along the terms of being a steward for my state, especially as it hit our 100th year celebration.
Was her very first step into the pageant world. It sounds clean and simple, but that claim is now being questioned after new images started circulating online. Because now there's a resurfaced photo from the 2010 Miss Colorado USA event, which actually took place in late 2009. And in that lineup, people quickly spotted Erika standing there in a blue dress, clearly already involved in pageants years earlier than what she originally said. And she wasn't alone either. Right there in that same lineup was Lindsay Halligan. That moment has people paying close attention, especially considering where both of their paths eventually led. In more recent years, Lindsay moved into a major legal role.
Erika has been involved in pageants from the very beginning. Her mother is definitely the person who pushed that. I actually do believe that Erika loved basketball. There's no question she plays basketball. But this idea that she didn't want it is just not true. It's so objectively not true. Erika, without question, and anybody who's being objective and honest and looking at her history and the people that she dated and the people that she wanted to be in close proximity to, can guarantee to you that this girl wanted to be famous, like very badly wanted to be famous one way or the other. And one of her exes was very clear. He said to me, I was warned by another person in beauty pageant world that girl will do anything to get to the top, and her mother will do anything to help her get to the top.
Although her appointment later faced challenges and did not hold up in court. Even so, the overlap between these two women's early pageant days and their later involvement around public institutions has people asking more questions. Some online are even pointing out how unusual it seems that two contestants from the same pageant stage ended up moving in high-level circles at the same time. Whether it's coincidence or just strong networking, that connection is now being analyzed from every angle. It goes even further. People have noticed that Erika and Lindsay are close in age and both attended the same private college in Colorado, Regis University. That shared background is now being added into the bigger conversation about how their paths may have crossed more than once over the years. There's also discussion around Erika's move into real estate back in 2018.
Her mother herself, Lori, was a model, actually, at one point. So that hunger for Erika to get to the top, there is a connection just based on discussions I have had with multiple people to her mother. Erika is, without question, a climber, okay? She is also, without question, willing to lie to make her mother look better. I mean, to say I grew up with a single mother is not true. So why is she saying it? Well, people suspect probably Lori is the person in her ear getting her to say that because it makes Lori look good. She wanted Erika to be famous, but let's not remove Erika from this. Erika desperately wanted to be famous.
Where she joined a well-known firm despite having limited prior experience in that field. That company has appeared in publicly discussed records connected to Epstein-related investigations, which has added even more curiosity and questions around the situation. To be clear, these connections are being discussed online and remain part of ongoing public conversation, not confirmed conclusions. But with older photos, timelines, and career moves starting to line up in unexpected ways, people are continuing to look deeper and question how everything connects. And as more details come out, that original claim about her first pageant experience is becoming harder for some to accept at face value. The timing just isn't sitting right with everyone, and that's why the conversation keeps growing. Another name that keeps popping up is Lehman, who was leading the Corcoran Group during the time Erika worked there. That name has appeared in publicly discussed records connected to Epstein-related investigations, which has added even more attention to Erika's timeline as people continue digging into her past, roles, and connections. Now the focus shifts back to her pageant years, and this is where things really start heating up. Candace Owens recently weighed in and claimed that Erika's timeline doesn't fully match what's been presented before. According to her, Erika had long-term ambitions of becoming widely recognized, and that drive may have influenced many of her early moves. Candace also pointed to Erika's upbringing, mentioning that her mother, Lori France, played a strong role in guiding her into the pageant world. It's also been noted that Lori had a background in modeling, which could explain how Erika became familiar with that environment at such an early stage. Then things took another turn when an older interview with Erika resurfaced. In that clip, Erika openly talked about wanting to be in the spotlight and even shared her goal of becoming a Hollywood actress. That detail is now spreading fast because it lines up closely with what Candace was describing. And now,
I currently live with my roommate who was Miss North Carolina 2012, and we competed together. And it's so funny because we always laugh about how right after the pageant, it's one of those things where the pageant excels you, but also really holds you back. Like, we didn't have the opportunity to do internships like other people because we were too busy preparing for Miss USA. We didn't have the opportunities to do certain things because we were so caught up thinking, okay, after Miss USA, we'll move to LA and we'll become, famous because our agent is going to book us for XYZ, and then we'll somehow get on a reality TV.
People are looking at Erika's relationship with Charlie from a completely different angle. Some are questioning whether their connection was entirely organic, especially considering how different their backgrounds were at the time. Charlie was younger and had openly shared that he didn't have much dating experience before meeting Erika. Meanwhile, Erika had already been active in social and professional circles, which has led some online to wonder how their paths crossed and how quickly everything developed. Observers are pointing out that she appeared comfortable in high-profile environments, while Charlie was still adjusting to that level of visibility. There's also ongoing discussion about the types of circles Erika was connected to, with some suggesting she moved within well-connected environments. While these points remain part of online conversation and are not confirmed facts, they continue to spark curiosity about her past relationships and networking patterns. Because when you line up the timeline, people naturally start asking questions. Charlie was a rising public figure at a young age, focused on his work, and still figuring out his personal life. Then suddenly, someone experienced in public-facing roles enters the picture, and the relationship seems to move quickly from there. At the same time, people around Charlie were reportedly sharing their opinions, with some suggesting that Erika stood out significantly compared to what he had experienced before. Whether that had any real influence is still unclear, but it's another detail people are now examining closely. And the more these details get revisited, the more this story keeps building momentum. People are trying to figure out what was coincidence, what was timing, and what pieces of the story might still be missing from the bigger picture. When you start putting all these pieces together, the timeline begins to feel less random and way more structured than people first thought. It's no longer about one moment or one detail. It's a chain of events that keeps lining up in a way that has people seriously questioning how everything unfolded. And this is where things really take a turn. The story of how Erika and Charlie first met has never stayed consistent, and that alone has become a huge talking point. In one version, it was described as a simple, natural meeting.
The fact that we were able to pull off an event of a century, like, it's just insane. We had over 275,000 people that attended, and the stadium overflow. We're at like over 200,000 for merch sales. Don't quote me on that because I think it just keeps like bumping up like crazy.
Something casual that just happened. But in other versions, the setting, the timing, and even the circumstances start shifting in noticeable ways. At one point, it was said they met through mutual connections. In another version, it sounded more like a chance encounter during travel. Then there's also a version where it came off like a professional meeting that turned personal. And when you line those versions up side by side, they don't fully match. And people are definitely noticing that. That's what's making people pause and look closer. Because when origin stories keep changing, it raises real questions about what the accurate version actually is. And even more importantly, why it hasn't stayed consistent from the beginning. Now add that to everything else already being discussed. The early pageant involvement, the connections to influential circles, the fast movement into high-level spaces, and the timing of her relationship with Charlie. When all of that overlaps, people begin to see the situation from a completely different angle. There's also growing attention on Erika's international travel history and the people she reportedly met along the way. Trips that once seemed routine are now being looked at more closely, especially when placed next to the timeline of her personal and professional moves. And again, none of this is being presented as confirmed conclusions. These are ongoing public conversations, with people analyzing patterns and trying to understand how all these pieces might connect. But the consistency of those patterns is what keeps drawing more attention. Then there's the shift that happened later in Charlie's public presence. People who followed him closely noticed changes in his tone, his focus, and even how he carried himself. Some believe it was simply the pressure of being in the spotlight. Others think it may reflect something more personal happening behind the scenes. Because when someone goes from appearing fully in control to seeming more reserved over time, it doesn't go unnoticed. And those subtle changes are now being revisited alongside everything else. At the same time, Erika's role seemed to become more visible. From being known mainly for pageants and appearances, she gradually became more connected to larger platforms and responsibilities. That transition is now being looked at with a lot more attention. People are also pointing out how quickly certain opportunities appeared. Positions, access, and influence that often take years to build seem to come together in a much shorter time frame. That doesn't automatically mean anything unusual, but it definitely adds to the list of questions people are asking. And then there's the way criticism has been handled. Each time new discussions or claims come up, the response has often been fast and strong. But instead of quieting things down, that approach seems to bring even more attention to the situation. Meanwhile, those following the story aren't focused on just one claim anymore. They're comparing interviews, reviewing timelines, revisiting old footage, and connecting details that were once overlooked. It's like a puzzle where new pieces keep appearing, and every new piece shifts how the whole picture looks. Even smaller details are now being analyzed closely, the way certain events were described, the timing of key decisions, the people involved at different stages. Nothing is being ignored anymore, and that level of attention makes it harder for anything to slip by. And as this continues to build, one thing is becoming clear: the public isn't satisfied with surface-level explanations anymore. People want clarity, consistency, and answers that actually line up across the board. Because when stories shift, timelines overlap, and connections keep appearing, it naturally leads to more curiosity. And right now, that curiosity is only getting stronger, not weaker. Right now, everything is still unfolding in real time. New discussions keep popping up, older details are being revisited, and the conversation is constantly evolving. Whether this all comes down to coincidence, misunderstanding, or something more layered, one thing is clear: people are paying closer attention than ever before. And they're not just focusing on what's being said today, they're going back, rechecking timelines, reviewing past moments, and asking questions that weren't even on the radar before. And until those questions are addressed clearly, this situation isn't slowing down anytime soon. It's only getting bigger, louder, and harder to ignore. It didn't take long for Charlie to get pulled into that relationship, and now people are looking back at how quickly everything moved with a completely different mindset. At the time, it may have seemed natural, but with everything that's come out, some are questioning whether there was more happening behind the scenes, because right after they got married, Erika's public image noticeably shifted. She leaned into a different lifestyle presentation, one that felt very intentional and carefully shaped. And now looking back, people are pointing out how different things seem compared to that earlier period. Then came the moment that changed everything. After Charlie passed under tragic circumstances, what followed raised a lot of questions. Within just over a week, Erika stepped into a major leadership role, taking control of a large and influential organization. Supporters say this was planned in advance and that Charlie trusted her to continue his work if anything ever happened. But critics are asking how realistic that situation really is. They're questioning whether someone with her background would typically be ready to take over something that big so quickly. And that's where the debate really intensifies. Some believe it was simply trust and internal planning, while others feel the transition happened too fast and too smoothly to overlook. The speed of it all has become one of the biggest talking points in this entire situation. Then there's the reaction that followed. Moments that were expected to be serious and respectful are now being re-examined after certain clips and audio began circulating online. In those moments, some viewers felt Erika appeared more focused on logistics and public engagement than expected, which has added even more attention to the situation. Of course, it's important to remember that people process difficult moments differently, and public figures are often under intense pressure during emotional situations. But that hasn't stopped people from analyzing every detail, especially when timing, messaging, and reactions don't fully align in their view. So now the conversation has shifted from just what happened to how everything was handled afterward. People are comparing timelines, reviewing statements, and asking whether this was all coincidence or part of a larger chain of events. And that's where things stand right now. A situation full of questions, mixed interpretations, and a growing audience trying to figure out what's real and what isn't. Now I want to hear what you think. Do you see this as a series of coincidences, or does it feel like something more structured? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you in the next one.